It's always interesting to learn about the history of a company, but it seems somewhat rare for one of these videos to cover a business that started post-2000. All of the juggernauts have history spanning back to the mid-1900s or later. However, one startup exploded beyond any conceivable expectation, and at one point grew to become one of the most high-valued private startup companies in the world. So let's dig into the short but eventful history of Uber.
3-minute flicks. Entertaining, educating, and enlightening.
Uber's beginnings lead back to 2008 in Paris, France. Travis Kalanick and Garrett Camp were attending an annual tech conference known as LeWeb. On a cold winter night when the pair were leaving the conference, they were unable to hail a cab anywhere on the streets, bringing to mind how outdated the system seemed. The two brainstormed during their search for a ride and came up with a simple idea. What if you could request a cab from an app on your phone? After the conference, Camp would return to San Francisco and continue pondering on this idea, before landing on the name of UberCab. Camp worked during his free time on a prototype for the UberCab system and had reached back out to Kalanick to join the company as the chief incubator. 2 years later, in 2010, UberCab would hit the streets of New York using only 3 cars, and the official launch would soon follow in San Francisco. The idea was to become the taxi ride of the future. With a few presses, a ride could be on its way to your location, which had been GPS pinpointed, and the charge would automatically ring to the card on file. It took hardly any time at all for Uber to become one of the fastest growing companies in the entire country, and in less than 2 years they were going international. For a while, ordering an Uber was roughly 50% more expensive than calling a cab, but the convenience cost proved to be incredibly reasonable to most people. Shortly after their international debut, UberCab would receive a pretty heavy pushback for invading on the taxicab space, causing them to drop the cab part of the name and rebrand to Uber, instead trying to portray themselves as a service for finding a private driver rather than a replacement for a taxi. As with most companies with unprecedented growth, it would seem that that level of expansion would eventually become unstable, as a few years later Uber would begin reporting gear losses. Unchecked growth wasn't the only thing facing the company though, as a series of lawsuits regarding treatment, fair pay, sexist comments, and the behavior of the CEO, as well as many more issues, would bombard the company. In 2017, Kalanick would leave the company along with 20 other employees in a last-ditch attempt to save the company from skyrocketing downward. Additionally, taxi drivers in many major cities around the world have protested for years against Uber, claiming that Uber avoids the taxi industry and allows them to bypass local laws and licensing fees, a battle that still rages to this day. Despite their admittedly still massive size, Uber hasn't had much good news come their way in quite a while, but perhaps if they play their cards right, they can return to being one of the most exciting and healthy companies as they once were.
Three-minute flicks. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. We create new videos weekly.